Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning.
Chair Stone, we do have a quorum whenever you are ready to start.
Fantastic. Let's go ahead. It's 10 o'clock. Meeting is called to order. First item is roll call. Rhonda.
Thank you. Coconino County, Tiffany Kerr.
I am here.
Thank you. Coconino County Citizen Representative Carol Covington.
I'm present and good morning.
Good morning. City of Flagstaff, Greg Clifton. He may join us. I'll let you know if he does. City of Flagstaff Citizen Representative Michelle James.
I'm here.
Thank you. NAU Aaron Stum.
Here. Good morning.
Good morning. Our NAU ASNAU student, Brendan Traxel, is expected. He will join us as soon as he is able to after class. CCC Kurt Stoll.
Good morning, present.
Good morning. And our Economic Development Representative, Gail Jackson. Here. Thank you. And we have members of staff here in the VR room as well as on Zoom. Thank you.
Thanks, Rhonda. We'll keep going right to Sam Short with our safety minute. Sam.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Transit Advisory Committee. So April is Distracted Driving Awareness Month. And transportation accidents are the leading cause of workplace fatalities, accounting for 40% of all fatalities, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics data. And many of these accidents can be attributed to distracted driving. Here are some distracted driving habits that can commonly cause accidents. Eating or drinking while driving, letting your mind wander from the task of driving. You should keep your attention on driving and be watching for pedestrians or bicyclists to enter the roadway. Bicycle Safety Month is in May. Avoid lengthy conversations with passengers in the vehicle and avoid anything that takes your eyes off the road, your hands off the wheel, or your mind off of driving. Cell phone use while driving is strictly prohibited. Please see your company's distracted driving policy for specific details that pertain to your exact job title. Mountain Line's distracted driving policy is 4.24 and is on page 76 of the personal policy manual. Also put a link into that policy if anyone wants a copy of the safety minute. Please take the pledge this month to drive distraction-free. Thank you and welcome to the April Transit Advisory Committee meeting.
Great. Thank you, Sam. Next item is approval of the March 2nd minutes or meeting agenda, meeting minutes. First, does anybody have any questions or comments on the minutes before I look for a motion to approve? Hearing none and seeing no hands, can I get a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the minutes. And this is Carol. I'll second.
Thank you. Thank you both. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are so approved. Moving right along into our business agenda item. We've got a number of presentations today. We're going to start off with the FY22 financial audit report with Josh Stone. Josh.
Good morning, Chair Stone and members of the TAC. Josh Stone here, you all know that. This agenda item is hopefully going to be briefish. Mountain Line, you may know, is required by state statutes and our IGA to have an annual audit conducted by an independent firm. after the end of each fiscal year. Once the report has been issued, the board needs to approve the report, and then a copy is certified and filed with the appropriate state and federal partners locations. We have contracted with accounting firm Fester and Chapman for this service for the last several years. And we received final issuance of our fiscal year 2022 financial audit dated March 31st. We're required to complete and file the report each year by March 31st. So to meet that filing deadline, the report was certified and submitted the same day. So overall, the 2022 audit was fairly straightforward. All the financial statements were free of material errors. Underlying financial data was sound. No deficiencies were noted in our federal grant reporting, which is the most stringent. So that's good news. Fester and Chapman did provide an opinion that the year-end closing process was not completed timely. And we had to complete some reconciliations and adjustments later than our regularly anticipated timeline. I think everyone is aware that particularly in the fiscal year 2022, there were some staffing challenges and a change of financial oversight to me. So as this was my first year completing most of the reporting, 100% myself, I wanted to, make sure everything was thoroughly reviewed for accuracy and brought up as up to date as possible, which did result in a longer timeline. I think ultimately this was worthwhile as the financial statements were correct. We did file a corrective action statement for this process and timeliness finding. Essentially that we will review our established year-end closing procedures and timeline, just to make sure that we're as timely and adhering to those as we're able. I think we've already made some strides in this current fiscal year, keeping most reporting, very current. So hopefully the end of this year should not require as quite of extensive of a review as it might have last year. So that is the audit. I just want to thank everyone on staff that contributes every day to making sure our records are being kept accurately and all financial policies and procedures are followed. I believe Rhonda made the report available to you in the agenda packet. And that is all I really have for this agenda item. If anyone has any questions, you can let me know.
Thank you, Josh, and congratulations to you and the team. Financial audits can be, a little nerve-wracking, and it's fantastic when there's really nothing for them to report. It's almost like they're looking to give you recommendations, so they give you something. So great job. Any comments or questions for Josh? Okay, thanks, Josh.
Chair Stom,
Hi, yes.
if I could, I really want to express a lot of gratitude for Josh and our accounting team members and, as he said, our staff. This is our third year in a row with no findings of significant value, meaning no misplaced money, no inaccurately recorded expenses. And that takes an effort, starting with the person making the purchase, approving the invoice, and the team who's managing those. And I actually appreciate the diligent approach Josh took to ensuring we were ready for this audit, even though it was noted as a finding because it was longer than usual. But I have the utmost confidence in the job that Josh is doing, and just wanted to share my gratitude on behalf of my position here and our team.
Thank you, Heather. Next item on the agenda is the Metro Plan and Mountain Line Coordinated Public Transit Human Services Transportation Plan. Mitch.
Hello. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Madam of the Chair and members of the TAC, for letting me speak to you guys today. I am talking about the coordinated. Oh, that works. I'm talking about the coordinated plan and the overall purpose of the coordinated plan is to improve transportation in our region for older adults and people with disabilities. It is updated yearly with a major update every 4 years, which happens to be this year. Oh, actually, I went forward, sorry, to this. The first update we have was we do have a new cover page. And this is just a general overview slide of the purpose of this plan. The Coordinated Mobility Council is made up of community members, Mountain Line, Metro Plan, people with disabilities, older adults, and human service providers and nonprofits. Over the last year, the Coordinated Mobility Council has met quarterly and helped brainstorm transportation gaps and prioritize the new strategies we made because of these gaps and how to address them. So transportation gaps are split into 5 categories consisting of information, temporal, spatial, infrastructure, and human capital. From the brainstormed gaps in August that the CMC came up with, we created 8 new strategies and modified 2 existing strategies. Between the last update, these are some examples of the progress we've made. This is not an exhaustive list, but rather some examples. We received grant funding to address website accessibility. Mountain Line Go was a pilot program and now is a permanent program. The Commission on Inclusion and Adaptive Living has started working on mobility issues due to infrastructure. And we are also partnering with the city to improve access to transit within 3/4 of a mile. The new strategies were added to every gap except for human capital. The gap with the most new strategies was infrastructure with 4 new strategies, and the second was information with 2 new strategies. From these new strategies, the Coordinated Mobility Council has created 2 subcommittees. The first subcommittee is a wheelchair accessible vehicle committee that deals with the strategy of bringing awareness to taxi companies about the need for wheelchair accessible vehicles. And the second subcommittee deals with simplifying the paratransit qualification process to reduce the amount of time and paperwork needed to qualify. All of these strategies are listed on your staff report. And then the things that we added to existing strategies, we added including flood-related barriers to the keep sidewalks free of ice and snow and clear of other obstructions strategy, as well as we added lighting code to the review sidewalk curb ramp standards and lighting code to verify their accommodating of people with mobility limitations. Some other updates that we had were things like updating the service providers in the Metro Plan region, updating the census data, FY 2022 and 2023 5310 regional grant projects, and then the Coordinated Mobility Council meeting agendas and minutes. This plan has recently been adopted by Metro Plan's TAC and Executive Board earlier this month, and we are seeking adoption from Mountain Line's Board of Directors. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thanks, Mitch. Any questions for Mitch? Okay, good job, Mitch.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next topic on our agenda is a zero fare policy, pilot student fare policy. Heather.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Transit Advisory Committee. The topic of this is, the title of this topic is slightly misleading. I will tell you the reason for the agenda item is that we do have in our work plan a commitment to conduct an 18-month-long zero fare pilot program for K through 12 and college students. And I'm here today to talk more broadly about zero fare policies and then to confirm whether we still want to consider a pilot or what are really the most appropriate next steps. And so we're going to speak broadly about zero fare and implications of even considering zero fare. So zero fare transit really has been adopted by many agencies in the industry. It was gaining interest prior to COVID, but COVID especially illustrated and became a focal point for multiple reasons, including some systems went fare free during COVID and they're like, wow, that was amazing, let's stay there. Others realized that zero fare is one method to returning ridership onto a vehicle. So increasing the interest of people in using transit. But I really want to spend time focused on kind of three different reasons to look at zero fare. One is expanding the equitable access to public transportation. Two is rebuilding those transit ridership trends. And three, key measure in reducing household transportation costs. And so I'm going to walk through some information that we have gathered on those three topics around zero fare. So when we talk about equity in our community and we talk about equitable access, zero fare reduces that access to, increases the access to reduced fare. And that's a very strange statement to say. I didn't know how else to say it. We have a fare capping mechanism available in our community, but it is only available if you buy passes. It is not available if you are a cash paying customer. And I think last surveyed, 68% of our riderships still paying cash on an everyday basis. So they don't have access to this fare capping mechanism that we really introduced as a way to equalize access to discounted fares. Fare capping takes that one step, zero fare takes that ideal one step further. It also increases access to all people. So it doesn't matter what you can afford when we talk about transportation, you have free transit if we went to a zero fare model. And that access can increase your ability to attend educational institutes, training opportunities, jobs, medical. So again, about the equitable access created through a zero fare program. And of course, it removes that barrier. I know when I travel, I spend a lot of time reading websites. Do they accept $5 bills? Do I have to have $1 in coins? What is the fare to using the system? And that's a barrier for a lot of people. That fear of how to pay a fare can actually create the decision whether to use transit today or not. And it removes that barrier for our most vulnerable people who don't have cars or cannot operate them. A recent Mountain Line survey, Jackie shared these results at the last couple of meetings. A couple of bullet points from that survey set 51% of our ridership has income below $20,000. They 72% lack access to a private vehicle, and 48% self-identify as a minority. Study done by the Shared Use Mobility Center, one of the resources we've used to really look at zero fare as a model, is that transit is a way to address social justice and equity concerns is a key consideration part of that. And then I bolded this statement made in that report that fares are viewed in some communities, in some places, as really a regressive tax that places a disproportionate burden on low income populations. And again, if you look at our survey results, you can see how much of our population is maybe impacted by that fare equation. When we talk about rebuilding ridership, Why would we want to rebuild ridership? We internally have a lot of conversations about, is ridership the right mark to be talking about? But in truth, ridership is reflective of several things. It does demonstrate our impact to single vehicle occupancy. So how many people are moving around in their individual cars? People on vehicles are not in a car. So that's a positive community benefit. And if we can shift people into the bus out of their cars, we have an impact on carbon dioxide and greenhouse gas emissions. This is from our master presentation that we share on a pretty regular basis. Other reasons for increasing ridership is really strengthening our own competitiveness for some of our federal funds. So remember, small transit intensive cities, STIC funding is about $500,000 per measure. We're currently getting all 6 measures. Ridership is key to continuing to receive those measures. Ridership and people using the bus support community climate action goals. And in fact, use of transit is a key measure to reaching those climate action goals that the city has adopted. And really, by doing zero fare and increasing ridership now, we're preparing for that next iteration of what service looks like in our community. It allows us to prepare for internally by staffing, changing how we staff, where we staff, as we look at more frequency, which will probably drive more ridership as a solution. And then when you talk about zero fare as it's related to household cost savings, more affordable community for veterans, disabled, and those living at or below poverty levels. Again, 51% of our ridership are at $20,000 or less per year. A household can save $10,000 by reducing one car. That's from AAA. And I will tell you that's several years old, so that's probably a little low now. I have a feeling that would be a much higher number with current gas prices. And then owning one less car can be the difference between affording a house and not affording a house, according to national statistics. And then I've included again another quote from our most recent survey that we are the only reliable transportation for an estimated 740,000 transit trips taken by our disadvantaged community members. So why or why not? When we talk about zero fare, it's a big debate in our community, but it's also a big debate nationally. And so I've put a few of the what we call pros and cons, the why or why not on the screen here. Transit is a public service and a utility. There is an argument that transit should be as free to use as a road, as a sidewalk, as a curb, as a gutter. And I know there's an argument. We pay for that through our taxes. Then isn't also an argument that we pay for transit through our taxes as well. It reduces the conflict on the bus between the rider and the driver. And the next couple are really key about our services. So the number one conflict on our bus is when a driver is trying to get fare from a passenger, when they don't have it, when they don't have the right amount, et cetera, and it escalates from there. It also allows us to look at route timing and performance differently. So currently we have to build what we call dwell time at stops to allow people to pay that fare. If you don't do that, how much more service could we do with that amount of time? By opening both doors, allowing people to freely board and deboard a vehicle versus making them come through the front door and also dig through their pockets for their fares. There is reduced cost associated with going to zero fare. Currently, you can see some of the numbers up here. We pay credit card fees on every transaction. We pay banking fees. We pay transportation fees. So that money comes in the fare box and then I have to pay to transport it to the bank. I have to pay the bank to count it and deposit it. And then we also have a staff person responsible for that cash transaction in our office. What this doesn't account for is the time that we all spend on fare and fare collection. This is just the more direct costs. There are indirect costs as well. And again, repeating that, removing that barrier to transit. Why not? Why do some communities think zero fare is a problem? Is there is that perception of it being a free program. So it is that important to us in our community, is that of concern that someone would say, well, the riders have to pay, they have to contribute to the system. And then a lot of systems are dealing with ridership problems as a result of folks who ride transit as a form of shelter. When the weather's bad, they ride without destination. They don't really have any place to go. And at least if there was a fare, you discouraged some of that ridership. And if it's free, there's no barrier to them using the service that way. And so that means we have to change how we staff it. So those are some of those all lead into these considerations. Do we have the capacity? If free fare really generates a huge push to our system, does our current structure have capacity within the vehicles to accept that ridership? We will have to change how we staff it. This means that we have to take some of that savings from fare and put it back out there in what we call bus ambassadors. I will say the bus ambassadors are probably going to happen whether we have zero fare or not. And those are the folks helping our riders learn the rules, support the drivers, and things that are happening in our community around service. We do have an opportunity because the new federal funding levels under the BIL and our ability to get the 6 stick measures does create capacity for us to absorb that fare loss. But we also have to consider how is the voter going to react to us absorbing that fare loss and going fare free right before we come back to them and ask for more money. So those are all considerations that go into this conversation. So I've got a lot of information at you, but ultimately I will be asking the board to consider several options to provide direction. And if we go back to the first thing I said is the reason for this presentation is we are supposed to be launching an 18-month long zero fare pilot for K through 12 and college students. One of my concerns is the timing of that pilot definitely put zero fare after a tax question, which might be a good thing, but it could also be a bad thing if we aren't including the impacts of zero fare in our evaluation of the tax question. So the other option is we could pilot a zero fare for the summer and gather data from the summer. Summer is generally one of our lighter ridership time periods, so I don't know if the data is going to be any more revealing or relevant than what we already know. We have a lot of data around zero fare for when we were zero fare. And the third kind of consideration is, do we just skip the pilots and make a determination that zero fare is the right thing or that zero fare is the wrong thing? I feel like we're at a crossroad on some of these considerations. And I'm really trying to get clear on whether or not to do the 18-month student plan, but I thought it was better to have a broader discussion with our board about, well, if we think about the student plan, is there another way to do it? Are we really ready to make a decision? And most of it's being triggered by a conversation around the citizen advisory committee that'll be looking at the tax question and what we need for expanding our services. And so with that, Chair Stallman and members of the TAC, I'd really like your input so that we can consider those items, the input, the feedback from you as we go into this conversation with our board of directors.
Thanks, Heather. Oh, good. Is that somebody talking? I was just going to say the group has been kind of quiet this morning, but this is definitely, we need to kind of help share our initial thoughts with Heather and the team so that they can continue to work on this as it's brought to the board. You know, I mean, and I'll start us off. My initial thought is it sounds fantastic. I can tell you, I remember when we did the Route 10A, and for those of you that are not familiar with that, that is one that Mountain Line did from the Grove, right? Was the Grove, Heather?
It was, yes.
Right, the Grove. And they did fare free, and it was heavily utilized. And when that stopped, that also impacted that ridership. But what it does, I mean, I will say from an NAU student, you know, we are pushing students to not bring a car, and by having fare free, or and I know that the Flagstaff community thinks, you know, NAU students driving is the biggest problem that we have. So I think that this would be in part, one part of a solution. I don't know that it prohibits them from bringing a car, but it definitely gives them a lot of things to think about, that they don't really need to bring a car, especially with that 10A data that I'm sure that you guys have and can show. Obviously then the you know, management side of me says, as long as we can afford it in the long term, is there any concern that down the road, should our government leadership change, that federal funding might also be taken away? Is that I mean, I assume that's always a possibility.
Thank you, Chair Stom, for those comments. I hadn't thought about Route 10A in quite some time. But to the question really regarding change in leadership at the federal level, that's always a risk. I mean, all of our funding is at risk every time we have change in leadership. I will say that historically, we see these changes in funding and they never go down. they at least maintain where they're at. And the projections that we're using are not that they will continue to increase, but that they will be maintained. And again, part of the consideration is the ridership has to stay at the levels or increase continuously for us to receive all 6 stick benchmarks. So I want to be really clear about that this is one strategy for ensuring we continue to compete for all 6 of those benchmarks. But you are correct. There's no guarantee that those federal funds will be forever available to us at our current levels.
Okay. We're going to go to Michelle, and then Brendan will be after that.
Hello, thank you. So I've been excited for a long time about this idea of doing zero fare. I guess, when I started hearing about it during the recent COVID issues. I think you guys explained this really well in terms of why or why not. So I'm supportive of going this way. My only concern is, will it affect the bond, the discussion about putting something on the election ballot for 2024? That's my only concern. So I'm thinking, the idea of a pilot study might be, pilot over the summer to allow people to experience what that's like, but then go back to having to pay might be an option. I can't say I have a firm decision on which one I like. I am very much drawn to doing the zero fare and doing it in such a way, if we can, that minimizes potential negative impact on a ballot measure in 2024. Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah.
My one thought about doing it over the summer, and Heather had already alluded to this, is that you lose the students, right? K-12 is closed. So I think that's where a fair portion of the riders will come. Brendan.
Good morning. I'd just like to say that zero fare is really exciting to me. I know, especially down at U of A, the student body, the student government down there is really pushing for zero fare. It's extremely popular among students. And I imagine that up here it's the same case. Firstly, of the 3 options, I definitely am wary of just going full into it right away. So the 18-month pilot is probably the most appealing because like Aaron said, it does capture those both K through 12 and college students in there. And I think it provides people a good year plus to really see where the mountain lion and transporting themselves that way can fit into their daily routine.
And I think if we do that, Heather, to your point about how it impacts the transit tax possible question, I think we just have to market it very well that those 2 things are separate. The transit taxes talks about increased and expanded service, not about supporting the fare free, if I'm understanding it correctly. Those 2 things. So we would just have to be really clear that one is not, that the tax is not to support the fare free if we're doing that pilot program. Carol.
There we go. Sorry for my.
That's okay.
I'm trying to figure out my video thing here. Anyway, I'm wondering if we have any sense of, if you go to zero fare and you have less time required, I forget, Heather, what you called it, but to deal with money as people get on the bus. How many additional trips could you make? How can you diminish the amount of time between runs through the cycle, the route? What is that? What are the impacts? Because I have a sense that increased service would be further encouraging the ridership along with the zero fare.
If I may respond, I'm actually not going to respond. I'm going to ask Estella Hollander, who's in the room, who's been working in that space and maybe busy, has something to offer from our recent experience with the 5-year plan to see what they can offer.
Yeah, I can address them. Let me know if you can't hear me or see me. So we did conduct a study called the Strategic Improvement Plan, or SIP, where it did look at this. So if we went free fare, or zero fare, could we increase the frequencies almost instead of adding another bus, go from 30 minutes to 20 minutes just by reducing that dwell time or that time it takes to board the bus. And the conclusion was no, we don't have enough ridership. However, I think it can, it obviously will improve the on-time performance and will maybe increase for operators as well. They'll have maybe more time at the downtown connection center to have a bit more relief between rounds. Because right now, some of the rounds, they get into the downtown connection center and then they go right out. So I think it can definitely help cushion or pad our current routes and improve that on-time performance.
And if I could just add on, the traffic congestion worsens every year, and this just builds in that much more resiliency into our routes that maybe they could last in its current structure for a few more years instead of adding a bus, in 2030, something like that.
Yes, in the room. Sorry, I cannot see who that is.
It's Gail.
Hi, Gail. Hi, go ahead.
So I struggle with this. I think zero fare policy is a great aspirational idea and it would be great for the community. But I'm looking at this from a business perspective. And the bus line has been heavily reliant on industry and development to pay the way to get increased redundancy, to expand services. And the data speaks for itself. It could make some changes, right? It's not going to increase redundancy. Students are your number one ridership, so making that free, I'm not sure that that's the right answer. Again, I like the idea of zero fare policy. I just don't think that the economics is going to work on it at this time, especially if you're going to go to the public and ask for more money in 2 years. I just timing, and I don't think that we're going to get the results that we want. And that's all I have to say on that.
Okay, thanks, Gail.
Yeah.
Other comments, questions for Heather on this topic? Okay, Heather, hopefully some of that conversation was helpful as you guys decide how to approach it.
It is, thank you. And I would just like to kind of go back briefly and respond to the comment about the pilot and getting information that we need. And I failed to mention one of the aspects that's really important for us is if we are going. Sorry, my brain is bouncing all over because I just want to respond to everything. The way that I have phrased everything that I have shared with you today is that we would rely on the federal funds to close the gap on the loss of revenue. One of the things that we did not talk about that our board will need to talk about is if that is the right plan. So one consideration is that we include it in the tax conversation, whether it is the voters say, I approve an extra penny in my taxes to make our system zero fare, or it's part of a package of questions that they approve to extend our existing services. Those are questions we need to answer. I think piloting over the summer maybe provides us the time to get some input. I don't know how valuable that input is for all the reasons that were expressed here, meaning K through 12 students aren't in school, the college students aren't in this community. We always have lighter ridership because families are on vacation, so people's work trip patterns are even different. But I think no matter what we do, one of the things I will be encouraging the board is that we are including zero fare in our polling questions to the voters, so that we do have a better understanding of if the system is zero fare, does that result in you the voter not wanting to support expansion, you the voter not wanting to support extending the current. I think that zero fare has to be part of our polling efforts as we go into the tax question. If we're considering zero fare, I think that's the main still question of which comes first. Is it we let the question play out and determine whether we are extending and or expanding? And then we look at zero fare, or are we trying to look at zero fare before that question? And I think that's what I'm trying to get really clear with the board on. So I appreciate the feedback. I took lots of notes. I may follow up with you individually just in case I got it wrong, because I want to give the board your feedback so that we are considering this holistically. And I'm very aware, and I want to recognize Gail's comments, that we're saying to business providers in this community, I can't afford to bring service to your new business location and I want you to pay for it. That's a very relevant conversation. And now I'm standing before you saying, well, we're going to give everybody free fare instead. I'm very aware of the conflict in those statements, and it is something our board has to talk through.
Seeing and hearing no other comments or questions. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Next item is the FY24 capital budget with Josh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So today we're going to look at a brief summary of our fiscal year 2024 capital budget, sort of following on what we've previously discussed with the workforce and operating budgets. We've had what feels like a few sluggish years getting various projects off the ground and dirt being moved. Ultimately, of the last couple of years have been a lot of planning and design. Hopefully the results of those efforts will allow 2024 to be a much more exciting year with like visible progress as several of the projects move into their construction phases and really into their more expensive phases. So if you want to change to the next slide. That said, the capital budget is listed here in various somewhat self-explanatory categories with a total that comes in at about $52.6 million. I have provided the fiscal year 2023 budget and where we expect to end up for the current year. Anything not spent for 2023, which has already been budgeted and approved, will end up being a carryover request from the city. I hope that you can see the difference represented here. I didn't list it given the space constraints, but our overall new capital investments to approve for 2024 are really just a small portion of the overall 52 million. So, of course, the largest piece of the budget is the Downtown Connection Center, which is about 2/3 of all the spending. Hopefully you've all seen that the fencing is up, remediation is underway. You'll be able to attend a groundbreaking, hopefully in the next couple months. And then we should start seeing substantial progress over the next year and those associated expenses. The CDL course at NAU has a very short single season timeline, basically beginning now, I guess. The majority should be complete by October, so that will be a quick spend through. The vehicles and cast bar lines are sort of intertwined as some of the work to support vehicles like charging infrastructure, appropriate vehicle maintenance bays, some smaller facilities projects like concrete replacement to keep the facility in a state of good repair. Those all really are part of the larger goal of supporting the vehicle needs. I did want to note that the very top line is bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. Mountain Line received the grant funding for this and it's administering those funds, but the outcome is really the ownership of a capital asset for the city of Flagstaff. The city will provide local match funding for projects associated with this. You can see there's very little projected expense for those pedestrian improvements for 2023. Design contractor is still pending for that, and at this point, there's likely to only be 1 or 2 meetings once a contract is finalized. Other than that, I did not really plan to speak extensively about any of these projects. I think you're familiar with most of these things, as Kate and Heather and Anne and the whole planning team regularly provide updates for the various things that are going on, particularly the DCC. So at the May meeting, we'll be discussing the funding side of all of this. But if anybody has any questions about a specific line right now, that's all I have. So I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Thanks, Josh. Any questions for Josh? Okay, thanks, Josh. Next item is bus stop equity analysis update. Anne.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the TAC and Dino Capital Project Manager. I just am bringing forward a bus stop equity update report. I'm not seeking any seeking feedback, guidance from the board, but no specific recommendation at this time. A little background, Mountain Line approved a transit guideline document back in 2019, which really is a document, a planning guideline for the city, for developers to help integrate transit into the built environment. So part of that guideline, we developed a scoring sheet for our bus stops to look at what kind of amenities are warranted at different locations across our network, really trying to create a more transparent and equitable approach to bus stop development, you know, kind of taking out somewhat of the subjectivity of the process and being more consistent as we make decisions about bus stop improvements. And kind of as you know, this was approved back in 2019, our planning team took a look at our current bus stop network and kind of reran our system, our bus stops through this scoring, and to kind of do a little more of a gut check again on where we're at with our bus stops in our network. And we did find that we have about 2/3 of our bus stops that do align with the recommended types. So this scoring criteria takes into account ridership, land use, what's in the area of a bus stop, you know, schools and activity centers. There's a reference to what's called our permanent transit network, which was a component of our prior 5-year plan, which identified key corridors where we will always endeavor to have transit running service. And so part of that is, well, let's invest and continue to invest our capital resources in those areas. So, and areas also that just have high exposure to elements. So, you know, with that scoring, there's a variety of bus stop types. In our network, we have a sign stop, a logo stop, which is like the bench with the light, and then a full shelter. Those are the kind of the typical types. And this type 4, the last one, is really more associated with the BRT, like would have a much larger platform, a raised platform, may have some other wayfinding and such. So really in our current bus stop system, we have the 3 types up through a shelter. And we did find that we have about 2/3 of our bus stop out of 180 stops we have are in alignment really with the bus stop criteria. We did find we have about 1/3 of our stops that we would like to, about 58, you know, do some improvements, either bring a sign up to a logo or a logo up to a shelter. And out of that, we did identify about 20 stops that we would like to ideally put shelters in. And then we only found we had a few stops that might be a little overbuilt, but you know, that's great for the writer. So really, we do have, you know, an outline looking ahead of, you know, pending funding and opportunities to, you know, plus up some of our bus stops. And at least this, you know, this tool helps us identify where we put those resources. There are a couple of factors that impact why we haven't had shelters or other improvements. And really, it does pretty much come down to two things: budget and then right-of-way ability to actually build the stop outside of the right-of-way. Because typically most right-of-way locations, we can get part of our shelter pad, but not the full depth of the pad. And so then we're working with our adjacent landowner to get a transit easement and, get their partnership on that. So one of the components of the next step to help us make these improvements long-term with really more of the right-of-way piece is we're going to be bringing forward a policy to the board, probably in August timeline, that will provide some better guidance for staff to be able to say, how are we going to go about, if there is locations we want to make sure we're getting the needs that we've identified, what's the process we're going to use? Do we, end up determining we're going to potentially, pay for an easement, but really that process, and working with our city partner on that as well. But that's forthcoming, but that's related to this topic of really trying to, improve amenities in our bus stops. So with that, I welcome any questions or comments.
Thanks, Anne. Comments or questions for Anne? I appreciate the looking forward to developing a policy to say, how are we going to address some of these deficiencies? So thank you for that. Hearing and seeing no other questions. Thanks, Anne. And the last item on our discussion items is Mountain Line Express service for the 2022-2023 year. Estella.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the TAC. Estella Hollander, Mobility Planner for Mountain Line, and I'm here to provide an update of this Mountain Express season that just finished at the end of February, and just providing an update, not seeking any action from the board. So Mountain Express is a seasonal route that serves Arizona Snowbowl. It starts at our downtown connection center, goes to Flagstaff High School, then goes along Highway 180, and then stops at the Fort Valley Park and Ride at kind of the base of Snowbowl Road, goes up Snowbowl Road to serve the ski resort up there. It runs between the holiday of December 26th and then, or this year was December 26th to January 1st. And then weekends in January and February. We did not run service January 15th or February 26th due to inclement weather. So this year we did have a slightly shorter season compared to previous years. This year the service ran every 30 minutes. And it's always been free to ride. So riders can just hop on. There is no fare to board the service. And Snowbowl funds the service. So they pay the operating cost per our approved cost per hour, cost per mile methodology. So looking at ridership, so from 2015 on the left side and going to most recent, and then the red line shows the total snowfall. Being that this does serve the ski resort, snowfall does have a big impact on the ridership, as well as when Snowbowl implements where you have to have either an all-wheel drive or chains. Mountain Express provide that option for people. And so this year we did have 12% increase in ridership compared to last year. We had a little over 8,000 or 8,200 trips. And obviously you can see that snowfall is up there. Compared to the 2018-2019 season, which has been our highest to date, that year we ran 20-minute service. There was a really big push marketing from Arizona Snowbowl as well as Mountain Line. And Snowbowl also provided $10 vouchers or like coupons that riders could use as a resort. So I think these different incentives, have shown that, the ridership can get definitely high. So I wanted to show this. These are boardings by stop. So kind of starting from our downtown connection center or DCC, the route then again moves to Flagstaff High School. Pioneer Museum is on Highway 180, and then the Fort Valley Park and Ride is at the base of Snowbowl. Hart Prairie is at the top of Snowbowl Road, and then going back down Savannah Way is on Highway 180. So that top line is the most recent season, and This year we did serve the Fort Valley Park and Ride. We have not served it the past 2 years. And this Fort Valley Park and Ride is kind of overflow parking for Snowball. And we wanted to be a good partner to Snowball. So we did serve it this year. But the last 2 seasons, we did not serve it because I think due to COVID, the capacity at Snowball maybe didn't warrant having that kind of overflow lot at the base of Snowball. But the interesting point is, so this year, 11% of the boardings were at that Fort Valley Park and Ride, and the DCC was about 17%. So compared to the last 2 seasons where we didn't serve Fort Valley Road, the boardings at the Downtown Connection Center did decrease. So I think it shows, by having, by not serving that Fort Valley Park and Ride, we can actually hopefully decrease some of the number of cars on Highway 180 and potentially, reduce some of that congestion. So I think it's just kind of that push of trying to, hopefully maybe not serve it in future years. So with next steps, we will be discussing service levels with Snowball this summer. So we will discuss frequency. If we have the ability to maybe go back to 20-minute service, that is largely due part to Mountain Line staffing and the ability to have an extra operator on there. We'll also discuss the number of days. So if we continue, doing between kind of Christmas and New Year's and the weekends in January and February, as well as serving the Fort Valley Park and Ride. For those who have been on our TAC long enough, this was kind of an item kind of going into this season, and we have had discussions with Snowball of not wanting to serve that. Due to part, I think it goes against some of the goals of kind of wanting to reduce some of the traffic on Highway 180, but we'll continue to have discussions with Snowball and be able to provide some of that data, like I just showed you with the number of boardings and how that kind of, once we open up that park and ride, it kind of decreases the number of boardings from Downtown Connection Center and a variety of other data points as well. So that is it from me. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Estella. Questions for Estella? Okay, thanks, Estella.
Thank you.
And then the only thing we've got so progress reports, as a reminder, folks can read those on their own. The one area that we do have Heather speak on is a summary of current events.
All right, I'm pulling them up as we speak. We'll start with the slide that Rhonda has up on anniversaries. We are celebrating a milestone anniversary this month. Teresa Sharon, on the screen it says she's a transit operator. She also serves as an operations supervisor. She's what we call a relief supervisor, so she's cross-trained to do both functions. It's been fun to see her growth in that role of leadership and modeling behavior. I think that when staff are cross-trained, we start to see them even conduct themselves differently as an operator, which is so appreciated, and I look forward to getting more staff cross-trained, but very excited to celebrate that 5 years with Teresa. And I will just footnote, our operations division has really stepped up their recognition game. We of course invite milestone anniversaries here to the boardroom to be recognized by our board, and we celebrate them in a lot of different ways. But operations is now celebrating on the bus with these staff members, handing out cookies and candy, and really creating a celebration with our riders for these milestone anniversaries. So very exciting and fun, and I look forward to Teresa being able to experience that. Her anniversary is actually at the end of this month. Ken Lesinski celebrating 9 years. Ken has worked a variety of roles in our agency. He was an operator when he first started. He also worked as a safety trainer for many years before going into the role of scheduling coordinator. He does do operations supervisor and support duties, as well as creating all of our bids and schedules. We implemented a new software several months ago, and Ken has become the system expert on that software, and unfortunately has had the task of telling operators that their schedule is different, and many of them do not like the difference that I have asked for. And so he has been the messenger on many of those conversations, and he does just such a great job of being a professional, spending the time listening and explaining what we're doing. So very excited to celebrate his 9 years with us as well. A couple other updates, 7 of us participated in the Arizona Transit Association Conference earlier this week in Mesa. Governor Hobbs actually opened the conference, and I'm very excited to share with you, she used the word transit in her opening remarks and talked about her commitment to transit and transit funding as an infrastructure. We in the transit industry are always pleased when our public officials talk about transit as part of infrastructure and not just roads. We were able to connect with many of our peers, and I think we'll have some collaboration opportunities come out of that. In addition to chatting with staff from Senator Sinema and Senator Kelly's office while we were at that event. Our electric bus was actually showcased by Gillig at the event. So there we were with our bright and shiny battery electric bus at this statewide event. And then the bus actually drove one of the City of Phoenix transit routes to help them see how does a battery electric bus perform for them. So very excited to have that done. I will say the bus left fully charged and it returned yesterday and was at 30%. So it went to Phoenix and back and performed a service route and came back at 30% battery. So looking forward to hearing more details from our staff on what exactly that looked like, but it definitely gives us an idea of what we might see as performance and how long 70% charge is actually going to take on a plug-in charge in our facility. While we're talking about the electric bus, we will be launching that new bus on route service starting the week of April 24th. We're excited to get our riders on that vehicle. And so it'll be serving multiple routes around the community. Our goal is to get it actually on every route that we perform for a block of time. We don't anticipate that it will provide a full day of service, but we're excited to get it out there and get riders on it. And the second bus that we provided an update last month that was delayed potentially as much as 6 months. We actually got a phone call this week. It is on the manufacturing line now. So New Flyer was able to address the battery fire issue that had created the delay. We're glad that they fixed it and that bus is now in its build status, and we anticipate having it here by the end of June. So we're pretty excited to have that second bus come along. Mountain Line will be taking the electric bus to the Earth Day event on Saturday, April 22nd. And we will be offering free fare for all riders on our system in celebration of Earth Day and the things that we do to contribute to those initiatives. And then we will also be taking the electric bus to the STEM celebration at Fort Tuthill on April 29th. So that electric bus is stimulating a lot of excitement in our community, and we're happy to bring more. Operations and our fleet team identified and is in the process of installing a new air cleaning system on our bus. This is a lot of attention was generated during COVID and the pandemic on air quality inside the vehicle. And there are a lot of new solutions with air scrubbers that go right into the ventilation system of our vehicles, creating a cleaner and safer ride for all of our passengers. And I'm excited that they are making progress on getting that installed. Estella and some of our team members met with Hopi Phenom Transit to talk about potential partnerships and coordination efforts. Really, some of the key topics were utilizing our bus stops and connecting at the connection center, as well as potentially using our CDL class to increase the number of CDL drivers available to them and using that future CDL course. Those are all things that we wanted to see come to fruition as we built that facility. And so we're glad to have those conversations. It was interesting in the conversation. I'll be sharing this with the board as well. Hopi Phenom was unaware of the move of Northern Arizona Healthcare or the potential move of Northern Arizona Healthcare. And they do serve their current location. So that was an interesting topic for us to kind of wade into, and we've encouraged Hopi Phenom to reach out to NAH so that they too can understand how that impacts their services and their customers. As you may be aware, Metro Plan actually resides inside the Mountain Line facility at this point. We started our collaboration by doing payroll and procurement services together. Well, now they lease space from us and live within our building, and long-term they'll be moving into the new DCC with us. And the new service that we've added is we are now providing them with IT support. So a couple of things that does is really provide them with effective and efficient services. and we are able to share cost in a way that's beneficial to Mountain Line and our transit taxes. Couple other just quick announcement, planning received another grant award. Congratulations, Kate, who's not in the room, and Estella, who really envisioned that idea and wrote the grant application. It will support the zoning and code project that the board has identified within our work plan and that is part of our local priorities, which is really designed to get at how does the city and the county see transit in its code when they are looking at development projects. So we're excited to bring that to fruition through our partnership with MetroPlan. Josh finally has a candidate for the HR manager position, and we will be doing some interviews in the coming week. That position's been vacant for over 12 months, and we're very excited to see some forward progress and hopefully bring in some additional support. We have a rider named Jordan. He's been a longtime rider and he's a huge fan of our buses. You can actually go out and be on bus number 85, and Jordan can tell you how many miles are on the vehicle, what size the tires are, how big the engine is, when we bought it. He's this amazing rider that just loves the buses. Well, I'm very excited because our fleet team said, hey, I think we could work with his job coach at Quality Connections and create a job opportunity for Jordan. Jordan will start with Mountain Line in the coming weeks to work in our fleet division. So we're going to work with his coach and job skill training for him, and he will become part of the team. And we're just excited to see his enthusiasm and his energy here amongst our team members. And that is everything that I have to share with you.
That is a lot. Thank you, Heather. That was great.
Welcome. You're welcome.
If there are no further comments or questions, just a reminder that our next meeting is our joint TAC and board meeting. It is May 17th in person at the Aquaplex. And if there is no other comments or questions, meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Looks like Brendan has a
Thank you,
question.
everyone.
Oh, Brendan, go ahead. Sorry, so sorry I missed that, Brendan.
Oh my gosh, no worries. I just want to share that this will be my last TAC meeting as student body president of ASNAU. I just wanted to thank you all for allowing me to serve on this committee, and thank you all for the incredible work that you do. You know, being a part of this committee just shows me how much effort and pride goes into Mountain Line, and just continues to make me proud to be in Flagstaff. And so thank you all.
Thank you, Brendan. Congratulations on graduating.
Yes, thank you.
He will be missed. Thanks, everybody. Have a good week.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.